Story 1. I get very nervous around women who are interested in me, especially when I know she's watching me do something, even something trivial. On an early date, we went to the local shop to pick up some things for a picnic, including some gum. I was thinking really hard and aware that I was being watched. I had this money on the counter, gum in your mouth. Money on the counter, gum in your mouth. Easy. Suffice to say, when I put the gum on the counter and the €2 coin in my mouth, the cashier was baffled and my girlfriend, now wife, was crying with laughter. Story 2. I turned her down when she suggested we go on a date. I'm super awkward. I was working for Starbucks and she was a regular customer. I was new in town and noticed her a couple of times. We engaged in small talk, chatting about places to eat. She mentioned that there was an amazing taco place down the road and said we should go sometime. I misheard her, thinking she said, "You should go sometime." I replied with, "I'll definitely check it out." I handed her a drink, and she left very awkwardly. She was back the next day, and against all odds, I was able to clear up the misunderstanding. I wrote my number on her Starbucks cup. We went to that taco place for our first date, and she was right, it was amazing. 3 years married and 2 kids later. I'm really glad she saw through my awkwardness. Story 3. I forgot her name once when introducing her to a friend. This was maybe a month into our relationship. I was all like, "Hey, and by the way, this is, my girlfriend." Story 4. Not my story, but my parents. Some backstory: my dad has a brother who is only a couple of years older. Growing up, they would commonly try to steal food off each other's plates just to be annoying to each other. This was remedied by plate guarding and defensive maneuvers with utensils if hands got too close. On my parents' first date, my mom reached for something to try off my dad's plate, and he instinctively stabbed her hand with his fork, drawing blood and everything. He was obviously mortified. Glad my mom was daring enough to keep dating, marry, and start a family with the fork stabber. Story 5. On our second date, I arrived 1 hour late. When I went to greet her with a little hug, yes, that's how we greet people around here, I accidentally knocked her phone out of her hand. It hit the ground and cracked the screen, but I wasn't sure if it was already cracked. I apologized, and she said it was okay and that the screen was already like that before. Almost a year later, she confessed that I actually broke her phone that day. She had just gotten it from her mom. All the phones she ever had were secondhand, very simple ones, and she couldn't afford a new one at the time. Still, she lied and kept using the broken phone so I wouldn't feel bad. My heart sank. We've been married for 2 years now, and I've given her a brand new flagship phone every year ever since. Story 6. My wife was a devout animal lover and activist. I planned a proposal at a fancy Tokyo restaurant that only takes 3 tables a night and has 11 courses, which were filled with all sorts of innovative things, so you're never quite sure what's coming next. In between one of the courses, the chef brought out a cute little glass bowl for us to play with some squid. The chef informed us these were firefly squid local to the bay. My wife was delighted and practically named them. 2 courses later, they reappeared as entrees, floating on a glass plate lit up from below and arranged to look like they're swimming. She still said yes, but has never let me forget that I took her on literally the worst dining experience she had, and I had paid the most ever for. Story 7. Played Weird Al CDs nonstop for a 6-hour car trip to the beach. She didn't abandon me, but I haven't been allowed to play Weird Al in her presence for the past 24 years. I got tickets to see him this year on our anniversary and knew better than to ask her to join me. So I took a couple of my kids who appreciate the finer things in life. Best anniversary gift ever. Great show. Story 8. Soon-to-be wife here. When we first met, it was during an introduction class or something like that. He kept flattering the teacher and talking way too much, just being kind of a show-off. I wanted to punch him in the face. I later found out he was in almost all my classes. For lunch, a couple of girls and I decided to go to McDonald's, and he invited himself. I was annoyed. 2 months into our relationship, he confessed that he saw me and was intrigued and wanted to get to know me. So he did everything to get my attention. He's an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I'm surprised he managed to actually get my attention. We've been together for 10 years and are getting married on September 23rd. Story 9. On my first date with my wife, we got to talking about tattoos. I have a rule that if I have an idea for a tattoo, I sit on it for a while to see if I really would still want it. I mentioned this to her and explained how glad I am that I do this because otherwise I'd be covered in Tool, the band, tattoos, or some other dumb stuff. She rolled up her sleeve to show me that she had the lyrics to one of their songs tattooed across her arm. The lyrics are "All this pain is an illusion" from Parabola. For the record, I don't really hate Tool. I just used to be super into them in high school and have since grown out of them. I still put them on once in a while. My oldest brother unironically has a Creed tattoo on his leg. There's always somebody out there who has it worse than you. Story 10. 5 years ago, after dating for 2 weeks, I accepted a job offer on another continent. I told her we did not know each other well enough for me to pass up an opportunity like that, and if it was meant to be, it would work itself out. Well, it was meant to be, and we got married this spring. Story 11. We had a couple of great dates, and things were looking promising. Then I got super busy at work and didn't contact her for about 3.5 weeks without giving her a heads up. She decided to move during this time. After things calmed down at work, I texted her again. We worked things long distance and finally got married. She reminds me every few months that I didn't ask her out again for a very long time. Story 12. My husband kept calling me by the name of his previous girlfriend on our first date. I finally told him to give her a call because they clearly had unfinished business to talk about. He did, and she reminded him why he was happy to have her out of his life. And he never called me by her name again. 40 years later, it seems to have worked out in my favor. Story 13. My husband broke my thumb one night when we were slightly tipsy. Horseplay got too rough, and I think, based on my drunk memory, he slammed my hand against something. We both heard the pop, and I burst into tears. Story 14. Not the married man, but on probably our third or fourth date, my man mixed our soups. I got a watermelon gazpacho, a cold soup, and he got a seafood bisque. I'm a sharer, so we both tasted and didn't love mine, but we loved his. After the tasting, he boldly yet nervously states, "Mine is so great. I got this," while pouring our 2 soups into one. It was the worst lukewarm thing I've ever tasted. 5 years later, and we've never mixed soups again. Too risky. Story 15. Not me, but my first door neighbor's story. I didn't know their story until one day another friend told me what happened, and she confirmed it. She was at a party and caught him looking at her every now and then. She kind of liked him, so she decided to make the first move. She took a few shots for courage and went in. As time passed by, she continued to drink while talking to him and got very drunk, to the point of not being able to walk. He was the type of guy that didn't drink much at all and presumed she could drink a lot. But when she stood up from the couch after a few hours, the alcohol swept her to the ground. As a gentleman, he offered to carry her home. Note that we were in our late teens with no car and no money. So he started to piggyback her home, which was a 30 to 45-minute walk, like a normal sober walk. He managed to carry her on his back about 500 meters from her home and stopped to take a break for a moment. His back hurt him so much, so he decided to carry her in his arms. A few steps away, he noticed a very unpleasant smell. Since he wasn't from our area, which was rural, he asked her, barely conscious, what that terrible smell was. She just mumbled, "I shat my pants," then proceeded to pass out in his arms, only coming back to mumble, "Sorry," and passing out again. So what did the guy do? He brought her home and laid her on the floor, as he was afraid of messing up her bed or couch, and left home. But a few moments later, he came back, woke her up, and asked if she would mind if he helped her shower, since she couldn't sleep for 8 hours in that condition, mostly because it wasn't hygienic or safe and her whole house and everything would smell. She agreed, and after he bathed her, she asked him to sleep in her bed in case she needed him. So one time I asked the guy how he got over that. He said they clicked at first glance, and he just felt that he needed to take care of her because he took responsibility to bring her home all right. And if she said no to bathing, he would back off, but then wouldn't be with her. He said that while shitting yourself while dead drunk is still understandable, sleeping a whole day like that would be too nasty. He lay beside her until she fell asleep and then watched TV until she woke up. They have been inseparable since then. Since that first date. I have never seen them apart. It's been almost 15 years since then, and just recently, they had a beautiful little daughter. Story 16. We drank a lot on our second date and took an Uber home. The next day, we went back to get his car, and it wasn't there. He was so devastated. He had just bought it recently, and it was stolen. We filed a police report. Took forever and generally was a terrible experience. We walked to his friend's house nearby, and there was his car, perfectly unstolen. He drank so much he forgot he moved it before our date. Now, once in a while, when we're trying to find our car in the grocery store parking lot or wherever, one of us will say, "It's stolen. Call the police." Story 17. I was sitting on the couch as we were playing Wii bowling. She was standing behind the couch, lovingly holding me. I drew back the Wii remote and wham, I whacked her in the face with the Wii remote at full strength. Her mom was also in the room. Story 18. I didn't really do it, but I thought he would be weirded out anyway. The very first time he stayed at my house, after about 3 hours of my 2 male roommates trying to make him uncomfortable, we went to bed and he put his contacts in 2 shot glasses of water because he had no case with him. I don't know if that's a dumb thing to do. I've never worn them. Maybe we were drinking and that seemed like a good idea? Anyway, he had never had a pet and was kind of weirded out by my cat standing beside him and meowing at him all night. Is that normal? Is he mad at me or something? Woke up the next day to find out the cat drank all the water from the shot glasses, contacts included. I had to help him home because he is seriously blind without them. He still wanted to see me again even though the night was weird, and the cat became his best friend, despite some initial skepticism on both their parts. I just asked him why we put his contacts in water, and he said it was contact solution from one of my roommates who had contacts but no spare case for him to borrow, so we used the shot glasses. Makes so much more sense. And Chucky was fine after drinking the solution, though we did call the vet. Totally forgot that part. Well, it was 17 years ago. Story 19. Insisted that everything in San Francisco was walking distance from everything else, and decided we should walk from Pier 39 to Golden Gate Park. It is walkable, but not third date walkable, or whatever shoes she happened to be wearing that day walkable. Story 20. My uncle didn't call his now wife for over a year after they first met and he got her number. He kept the paper she wrote it on and ended up finding it and calling her, asking if she still remembered him and was still interested in going on a date. Story 21. Wife here. About 3 weeks into dating, my husband thought it would be romantic to pick me up and spin me around in his driveway. Unfortunately, it was not his most brilliant idea and he tripped and we fell right onto the concrete next to my car. Reader, he landed on top of me. Story 22. I can tell you for him. We were leaving his new apartment. Keep in mind, we've been dating for a short amount of time. We haven't been through a lot of firsts yet. His apartment was on the back of the building, so we had to walk through a small passage to get to the other side in order to leave. Imagine this passage is slightly shadowed, but the light shoots through it, creating this romantic silhouette. As we left his apartment and walked into this passage area, he grabs my hand and pulls me towards himself. I'm thinking, he is going to put my hand around his waist. How romantic. Locks my hand on his butt and loudly farts. It was a very brave move for a new couple. We've been married for 13 years now. Story 23. Wife here. But about 3 weeks into dating, my husband invited me to a house party at his best friend's place. We were playing beer pong, having fun. The other team was up. They tossed the ball and I leaned forward to try to block it. My now husband extended his hand out in front of me at the same time, catching the ball but also hitting me in the eye and somehow pulling out 3/4 of my eyelashes. He felt terrible about it and tried to burn off his eyelashes in drunken sympathy. He hates when I bring it up, but I think it is the funniest story. Story 24. She was about to sneeze, and she was sitting half on my lap, so I kind of thought she was going to sneeze on me, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I put my hand up to block her sneeze. Except I had a glass in my hand, and I blocked her own hand from covering her sneeze, and instead, she slammed her face into my glass. Married 6 years now. She still has all her teeth. Story 25. I made myself a burger for dinner before heading over to her place to hang out. Unfortunately, I'm not the best cook and left a little too much pink in that burger. While we were at her house, I bet her I could fit through the doggy door and crawled right through. Then she immediately closed it behind me, and we raced to the front door. She won and she locked it. At this exact moment, my bowels decided they had enough of that burger from earlier, and I felt my stomach cramp. Luckily, I held it all in and ran back to the back door with my cheeks clenched and started knocking desperately on the door. She was laughing at first, but when she saw my face go suddenly serious, I said very calmly, "I need you to open the door. Now, please." She unlocked the door and asked if I was okay. I told her to stay downstairs and turn the television up loud. She agreed but was very confused. So I ran upstairs and then had one of the most violent experiences of my whole life. I thought the worst was behind me until I went to wipe, and of course no toilet paper. She took my instructions really well, and when I yelled to her, texted her, and called her, I got no answer. After probably about 10 missed calls, she finally answered, and I asked her to bring me some toilet paper, leave it outside the door, and try not to breathe on the way upstairs. She was great about it and immediately started making fun of me when I came back downstairs. Now, quite a few years later, with a couple of kids and a cat, she's still making fun of me.